That is Legos, the stars and stripes in Legos. Thousands of plastic, tiny little bricks there on Washington's famous monuments. The shape of a gigantic American flag. Visitors to the National Mall putting it all together.
Yeah, a great fireworks show there tonight. Happy 4th of July to all.
Happy 4th, Outnumbered.
Co-host of After the Bell on Fox Business, Melissa Francis. Town Hall editor and Fox News contributor, Katie Pavlich. Former deputy spokesperson for the State Department and Fox News analyst and host of Benson and Harf, Marie Harf is here. And in the center seat, editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller News Foundation, Christopher Bedford, is outnumbered, so we say happy 4th.
Happy 4th.
All right. We got some flag up here and our, of course, signature color for Outnumbered.
Right.
Did you polish your nails the colors of Outnumbered?
I didn't, but it works for that.
It does. Look at that.
They were matches perfectly.
Yeah, that's just like our logo. Oh, no, they're on you. Hold your, yeah, well.
The answer was yes.
Yeah.
They were really for Pride Month, but they also work for Outnumbered.
They do.
There you go.
They do.
So
And
Melissa's got her Pride bracelet
Yeah,
on.
there you go.
Very nice. And you're getting married soon. We better get the most out of you if we can.
I'll be done. I brought my American Pride socks.
Nice. Of course you did. President Trump is ramping up his campaign efforts for GOP candidates. He's been talking them up at rallies across the nation recently, and it looks like it's paying off. Primary voters choosing incumbent Governor Henry McMaster in the South Carolina GOP primary runoff after the president rallied for him days after attending a rally for Senator Dean Heller in Nevada. Watch.
With Henry is you don't even know it. He does it in a very elegant manner. So I want to thank Dean Heller, who's been an incredible senator, worked so hard with us to get the taxes cut.
Meanwhile, a Gallup poll shows Republicans' approval of the president during the first 2 weeks of June at 90%, the highest since the week of his State of the Union address. The polling was done before the recent immigration controversy. The New York Times points out in a recent piece, quote, "This era of tumult has left Democrats energized and determined to win back Congress and act as a check on Mr. Trump. And their intensity has been reflected by strong turnouts in the primary so far. But still, in just the last year and a half, Mr. Trump has bounced back from crises that at the time seemed as if they might be too severe for him to recover politically." End quote. I might want to encourage them to call him President Trump every now and then, but hey,
Every now
it's
and
just
then.
me. Chris?
You know, I think a lot of this actually might be driven by his enemies, the Never Trumpers and the hashtag resistance folks, who are the more energized sometimes they get, even with this immigration fight. If they turn that energy into mobbing people in public or threatening a new bombing campaign like in the 70s, as one magazine just recently did, that's the kind of thing that really turns a lot of Americans off. And this is a country that throughout history has not actually been too far from political violence and has had a lot of periods of political violence.
You mean like the congressional baseball game
just
last
a year ago. Just a year.
And the Gabby Gifford shooting.
The Gabby Gifford shooting, although that wasn't political, that was just crazy.
Yeah, there wasn't really any political connections in
No,
that case.
I said the congressional baseball game because I meant it, because that was, as we know, political, and it was so short, in time ago.
Right.
You'd think that a big tragic event would make Americans who are against Trump kind of calm down the rhetoric, at least for more than 2 or 3 weeks. But after that congressional baseball shooting, things only calmed down for about a month. It seemed to be a little normal, and now everything's ratcheted right back up. And I think that's one of the things that drives the president's approval rating to be higher than any other Republican except for Bush after 9/11.
See, I think it has to do more with results. I mean, I think we all get caught up in the rhetoric and the back and forth because it's our job and we do it every day. But for regular people, they don't have the time. They're out there trying to get their kids to school and get food on the table and pay their mortgage. And they've seen results. They've seen lower taxes. They've seen the economy expand. They've seen promises kept. They've seen movement in North Korea. And there are what I call Trump deniers. I'm going to trademark that. And these are people who they look at the results and they just deny the existence of any positive outcome that's related to President Trump because they hate him so much because of his rhetoric or because of what he says. And so they just deny he could bring somebody back to life, giving them CPR. And they would say, no, that person's still dead. Sorry. Even as they stood up and walked away. They're Trump deniers.
To get this back, though, to the point of where Democrats are after that stunning loss last night, stunning, by a young woman who barely was funded, 28 years old. She was not on anybody's radar necessarily outside the state in which she won. And a Democrat who we've had on Outnumbered Overtime many times, he's been around forever. He thought he was going to be on the next House Speaker for the Democrats should they take back Joe Crowley. What happened?
I wanted him to be the next speaker. Well, before I get to Joe Crowley-Harris, what's interesting from that Gallup poll you mentioned is the president's numbers among independents is about 38%. So his Republican numbers are very high, but you can't win elections just with the base. So
But
I
that's
think
not just the base.
No, but it's Republicans.
I mean, 90% of Republicans goes beyond
But the
his
independent
base.
numbers are still pretty low. We will be watching that number as we get closer to the midterms. When it comes to Joe Crowley, I think what you see is a fight between generations of Democrats. I really like Joe Crowley. I wanted him to be the next speaker, but he took his district for granted. He didn't show up to 2 debates with her. I think this is actually something like happened to Eric Cantor, where sometimes when you're looking at national ambitions, you forget about the race you have to win right in front of you. And after Eric Cantor lost in 2014, the Republicans went on that fall to have a great showing. So this is really indicative of Joe Crowley running a bad campaign and his district being very far to the left.
So the reason that I bring that up, though, is when you talk about the Never Trumpers, the anti-Trump movement, whatever, there's also a movement apparently within the Democrat Party, Katie, that we're seeing that, they're split not on a message of whether they're against the president, but whether they should focus on being against the president. What are their real priorities?
Well, yeah, that's a big question about how much the resistance is actually helping people on the ground. We had this young woman in Queens upset the Democrat establishment. We've seen the party go to the left, and when you look at her platform, it was based on local needs and the community that she believes she is serving. It's not going to work, free Medicare for all, free housing, the things that she was offering are not going to work for every single congressman across the board. And it's certainly not going to work for the Democratic Party across the board, especially when you're trying to regain voters that went for Trump in 2016 that voted for Barack Obama. But I want to get back to the approval ratings for President Trump. The 90% Republican number is higher than it was on Election Day. He was only at 83% Republican support when he won in November, and that was pretty high. So he's gained support among Republicans for a couple of reasons. The first is I think they're getting to know his style a little bit. There's still some people who are a little bit off-put about the attitude and the way that sometimes he handles things, but they also understand how he operates now. The other is that he is getting results. It's a matter of packing the judiciary with conservative judges, deregulation. Businesses across the country now are able to breathe and hire, and of course the economy is better than it's been in generations, which automatically means that Republicans are going to be happy with him. And independents, maybe when it comes to Election Day, maybe that approval rating isn't so high right now. But as we've seen, after Labor Day is when we really start to see people pay attention to what's going on and how individual candidates are going to affect their lives at home at the kitchen table.
In the meantime, as we count down to the high-stakes midterms, Republicans may be finding themselves in the unlikely position of facing voter backlash over Obamacare. Politico is reporting that Obamacare premiums are expected to again rise by double digits next year, and that's giving Republicans heartburn. Quote, polling data has consistently suggested that more voters will blame Republicans for future problems with Obamacare. In addition, the GOP's repeated failures to repeal Obamacare after 8 years of campaign promises will make it difficult to galvanize the base on health care. Republicans scoff at the notion that they're to blame for Obamacare's failings. They point out the big rate hikes were a chronic condition of the exchange markets long before they took full control of the government. But Chris, it was their job to fix it. And that's what they said. They would get in there and fix it if they were only given the chance, and they didn't.
And we all talked about that at the time, that if Republicans campaigned for years and years and years on repealing Obamacare, and I think they were correct in saying that Obamacare was causing a lot of rate hikes. It was every time the government gets further involved in this completely messed up system we have in this country, where we have great health care and a terrible insurance market, which is basically what all this is. Every time the government gets more involved or less involved, it seems to make it worse. And Republicans, once they got together and they got rid of the individual mandate, they basically put their stamp on it, fair or not fair. And they need a couple of the Republican senators who are with them from Alaska, from Maine, to say, all right, we're going to work on this. We're actually going to try and fix this, because right now, consumers are going to blame them.
So I would just interject with Republicans actually coming clean about the fact that they have now gotten us to a place where the program is not funded. and that they really have to come up with a way to generate some cash. And maybe they go to these insurance companies. I know that, putting pressure on companies is not a very capitalistic way to do things, but you've taken away the basis of paying for the program by wiping away the mandate. And you've got another enrollment period coming up in a short few months, and you've got people having babies and who have diseases that need constant treatment. You've got the same issues that existed when it was broken under Democrats. Now it's broken under Republicans. And you talk about bringing Democrats to the table, that's going to take strong Republicans. Maybe somebody like, a Mitt Romney, if he gets in there in the Senate.
Yeah.
It's going to take people like that. Yeah, somebody who's made work in Massachusetts.
Yeah, he's an expert.
Exactly. You're going to need those people to come forth now and to say, how can we do this, but also politically balance it? I don't see that happening, and Republicans own it.
That's right. And this is the problem with failing to totally repeal and replace it with something else, but tinkering with the individual mandate. And I know Republicans
we
in
all
Congress,
need health care. That's why we all agree.
Republicans in Congress are legitimately nervous about this.
Well, Harris, you say that we all need health care, but the problem with the individual mandate was that they were forcing people who didn't want health care to purchase it. And they were forcing people
who
didn't.
But you have to replace the monetary program with something. And there's some other ways to do it.
Not necessarily, but because before Obamacare...
It's not funded right now.
But let me just finish. Before Obamacare, we weren't forcing people who didn't want or couldn't afford health care. So now you're saying we have to fund something that wasn't actually funded before with money.
It was broken before.
Because we weren't taking money from people who didn't want to buy health insurance for all of the reasons that they explained.
Is the same thing. It was broken then and it's broken now. The difference is you've got a majority party in both houses, and now we have to
politically, but the difference is that you're now not forcing people who couldn't afford health insurance on their own, and also who didn't want to buy it. You're not forcing people to buy a product they didn't want in the first place.
They didn't fix the essential problem, which is that there is no visibility in the pricing. I mean, you go to the hospital, you go to doctor, you get something, they say, well, that was a $4,000 test you just had. No one actually pays $4,000. It's a discount to this one and that one. The system's a mess, and somebody has to dig in and fix it.
And it's not like free market. These insurance companies, they lobbied for Obamacare. They've lobbied for every single government subsidy they could ever get. And the politicians maybe should stop listening to them.
Well, and real quickly, the reason why Republicans should be able to fix it, Katie, is because they legitimately believe that we can take it with us. That
they have a big problem on their hands, for sure.
But they got to work.
Absolutely.
There you go. A recent poll highlighting economic accomplishments under President Trump, whether the record-setting numbers could be a winning issue for Republican candidates come November, or even the president himself in 2020. Plus, a new study may make you want to spend less time with your smartphone when you're with your kids. Can you do it? It's a challenge. We're going to tell you why researchers say you should.
That the country has ever seen. That's how we're doing. And let me just tell you, because I hear a couple of the fakers the other day said, well, I think it's Obama's economy. Obama's economy. Obama. They want to put on more regulations. They want to take back your tax cuts, which are massive. They want to take them back, and they want to raise the hell out of your taxes, and the whole thing will go boom.
President Trump touting economic growth under his administration during a recent rally in Minnesota, and a new poll showing a majority of Americans agree with the commander-in-chief that he deserves credit for the recent progress. The CNBC All-America Economic Survey finding 51% approve of the president's handling of the economy, and a record-breaking 54% consider the U.S. economy either excellent or good. The president retweeting this post from his son Eric, boasting about the news, quote, record high economic optimism. 51% of people think the economy is good or excellent. This is the highest number CNBC has ever recorded. So, Mr. Bedford, the big question going into the midterms has been, will President Trump's approval bring Republicans over the finish line, or will it be a problem? And considering he has 51% approval on the economy, looks pretty good.
Yeah, and it's going to depend on what state you're in. If you're a Republican running in Connecticut, then the fervor of Democrats might make it so it's a really difficult thing to win. But President Trump is different from so many other past Republican presidents who have terrible approval ratings after 2 years, because he's actually done everything he said he was going to do, or at least tried to, whether it's tackling trade, deregulating, cutting taxes, trying to talk with North Korea, trying to figure out what's going on with the Iran deal, pulling us out of Paris. He's got a list of accomplishments that he's hit almost everyone he could, at least especially dealing with the U.S. economy. And we have what technically full employment right now. And for the last couple of years, I've known a lot of folks, even in good economies like Massachusetts, who have not been able to find a job, who are now working full time, bringing home money, proud. And that's a great feeling. It inspires optimism.
Marie?
Here's the challenge. If you're a soybean farmer in Iowa, you are watching this economic news very carefully and looking at tariffs, because the economic news has been good. But if President Trump follows through with some of these more aggressive tariffs, both Canada, the EU, and China, we are already seeing it hitting steel manufacturers, Harley-Davidson just moving some production overseas. I think that the Republicans should think very carefully about tariffs, because if they move forward and American workers and businesses are hurt, that will negate some of the tax reform benefits I think people have gotten, and it will hurt politically. The president needs to be told that, because this really affects him in some states he cares about, Missouri, Iowa, all across the South.
But Melissa, the Republicans have condemned tariffs, but President Trump is the one who's pushing forward with them.
Then why does he keep pushing forward with them, Harris? If he does,
I'll tell you exactly why. Because
they're hurting his voters.
This is how you negotiate. And we have rolled over and played dead on all of these tariff deals forever, and we have gotten completely hosed. And so he knows, since he is a negotiator, and anyone who's in business knows, that you have to create leverage in order to create a negotiation. So he has said, I will respond with tariffs. We will see if it works. I mean, I happen to believe that it will. I mean, you know, when you go in and you go to buy a car or a house, anyone who's done that, you say, listen, I'm willing to walk away from the table. I don't actually need that house. I don't actually need that car. That's the only way you have leverage and credibility. So he's saying, I will take the tariffs in order to get them to back down. We'll see if it works. I mean, I think that strength works versus we've had weak need, you know, from national security to tariff. Weak need doesn't work. We'll see if this works.
Can I just further that metaphor for just a second? Yeah. So you're sitting down, you're about to buy that house or whatever it is, but you also have cash in your pocket, which represents the leverage that you have in terms of the buying public here in the United States, right? And you're taking all of that away. You're not just saying that I'm going to walk away, but you're also taking your down payment cash and all that back too, which potentially hurts them because they can't do business in the same way. And by the way, on some goods, China has as much as 200% in tariffs against goods. It's many of these other countries
you're hurting American workers. I mean, soybean prices have plummeted. Soybean farmers are now making less money because of tariffs already.
So, Chris,
the steel industry is hurting right now already because of Trump's tariffs.
But, Chris, the
those
question
are voters.
is, President Trump's base has been very secure. Farmers in Iowa are part of his base. Are they going to be willing to ride it out, because they do things by the year? They don't do things by the term.
So far they have been.
So far, that's the big question.
The Iowa GOP is basically across the board supporting President Trump. I think the phrase I saw in the news is they're going to ride the tiger. They give him a little bit of they give him the credit to actually
ride the tiger.
Let's see if he wins.
See how long that lasts.
That's really what it comes down to. Are you willing to bet with the president? Do you look at the results that he got in North Korea, wherever else, and do you say, I'm willing to gamble with this person who's showing strength as opposed to weakness? And we'll see how long it takes is critical.
When it affects your pocketbook, it feels different.
All right. Well, we'll continue to watch, of course, and more Democrats running for Congress appear to be abandoning Nancy Pelosi ahead of the crucial midterm elections. How serious a challenge is this for the veteran lawmaker, and whether the Democrats will replace her as their leader? Plus, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker getting some 2020 buzz as Democrats look for a challenger to take on President Trump. The moves he's making that show he may be seriously thinking about it, and whether he's...
Where we won in a district that was a 20-point Trump district, when he showed some independence with regard to who he was going to vote for House leadership. That is a signal to a lot of people around the country that you are an independent-minded human being. You're an independent-minded candidate, and that is very valuable today.
Wow, that's moderate Democrat Tim Ryan. He challenged, you may remember, Nancy Pelosi for House Minority Leader 2 years ago and lost big time. But he says Democrats need to keep thinking about fresh leadership. And a growing number of Democrats are saying they will not back Pelosi for Speaker if they win the House this fall. One of those Democrats is Clark Tucker in a deep red Arkansas, who declares he won't vote for the liberal Democrat in his very first ad for the general election, adding this, quote, a Democrat pollster tells Politico, with very few exceptions, the biggest hurdle, the biggest vulnerability for Democratic candidates is Nancy Pelosi. There she is on the big wall. And the strongest card the Republicans can play is attaching a candidate to Nancy Pelosi. Meanwhile, it's not just House races where Pelosi could be a drag. Check out this ad from the hot Senate race in Florida. It's hot in Florida, too.
Nancy Pelosi's a huge influence on the Democratic Party and Bill Nelson.
I voted for Bill Nelson before, but I totally think it's time for somebody new.
I believe Bill Nelson is way too partisan. It's time for him to come home.
But some are saying it's too early to count out a savvy lawmaker like Nancy Pelosi, and that denouncing her during a campaign might not translate to votes against her. Politico wrote this, quote, Pelosi's supporters predict she would easily win the caucus vote, especially if no one credible steps forward to challenge her, paving the way for most Democrats to publicly support her in a House vote. End quote. This after last week's stunning primary defeat of New York Congressman Joe Crowley, the number 4 Democrat in the House, huge Pelosi ally and seen as a possible heir apparent to her leadership, end quote. Actually, not just seen as that, Marie. He was telling people that. I'm going to be the next House Speaker.
Yeah.
What does this mean, this push against Nancy Pelosi?
I think it's clearly time for new leadership in the Democratic Party in the House. And I think that, look, Nancy Pelosi is a historic figure. She has done so much for the party in terms of keeping the caucus together, in terms of fundraising. But the Republican side's getting new leadership, and there are young, excited Democrats on the House side who I think should step up and take the mantle. People like Seth Moulton, people like Sherry Bustos from a rural district in Illinois. There are people who are looking at Congress as it is today, who are willing to work with Republicans if it makes sense, but who represent the principles of the Democratic Party. I think she will face a serious leadership challenge, and she will probably not be Speaker if the Democrats win.
So, you know, I said in that quote from Politico that they're looking for, it wasn't the word qualified, but it was like that, candidates. Tim Ryan, definitely qualified candidate. This isn't just about age, though, Chris. This is not a generational thing only. Remember when she got bum rushed at the lectern by the DACA group, the Dreamers, who felt like Pelosi wasn't doing enough, even though she was a big voice on the issue at the time. All talk, no action was some of what they were yelling at her.
Well, Pelosi's really unified the Democrats, but she's kind of like the Charles de Gaulle unifying the government over in London. She's not on the actual front lines because she hasn't been in power for so long. Well, yeah, but he was hiding in London when the
he was hiding
when France was in trouble.
And then they named the airport after him.
Yeah, exactly. You know, Nancy Pelosi. It's not just about age, although now that they've lost their number 4, the leaders of the Democratic Party are 78, 77, 79. That's not good, but they're getting the number 4 lost to a radical, a democratic socialist, someone who's saying federal jobs program for all. Now, maybe that's something they should worry about. And Biden and Tim Ryan, do they have a shot in a place like that?
Well, and I heard you saying no, Marie, but Katie, I want to ask you about whether or not we're pitching to, I guess you could say, maybe not fringe, but the more radical on both sides of the political aisle.
I think the left has shifted far more left than the right has shifted right. I think it's obvious when they're electing openly socialist candidates to these positions. That was something even when Barack Obama famously said we're going to shift the wealth around, change the wealth around during the 2008 campaign. That was a big deal that he would even say that. And now the Democrats are openly electing socialist candidates.
In a pretty liberal district, though, you would admit.
Correct. However, you know, that is the problem, I think, with Democrats as a whole, is they're far left on a national level as well, and that's not going to be very helpful when it comes to 2020. But when it comes to Nancy Pelosi, it's all about money. A lot of people are going to vote for her in the caucus because she raises a lot of money for candidates.
Very good at that.
That is a big problem. Yeah. But the idea that she is again saying she wants to run for Speaker says it all. And it is to Democrat and Republicans' detriment not to be fostering and mentoring new talent, because you can't be around forever.
Amen.
Real quickly, Nancy Pelosi's approval rating hit 29% among Democrats recently. What do you make of that?
No, 29 overall. I think it was 55 among Democrats, which is still, when you look at President Trump, 90% among Republicans. I would ask Marie, because I really do believe that all these local races are about that local district. We read national things into them. But do you think, like, in terms of electing a new speaker, or I'm sorry, a new party leader in the House, or speaker if they get the majority, what type of Democrat do you think the body would elect? Is it one of these more left candidates who's younger, has a lot of energy, but happens to be pretty left in the party? Or do you think it's somebody who's more moderate? Who would get the votes from among those elected officials in the House?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it needs to be someone younger of the next generation who can work with both parts of the party.
Who is that
that's
today?
I mean, the two people I mentioned, both Seth Moulton, who's a veteran but from Massachusetts, Sherry Bustos.
Yeah.
These are two people who get the left wing of the party but are not beholden to it. Those are the kind of people that have to walk that fine line. And it's a really good question, Melissa. It will be fascinating to watch.
Do you think somebody that
really will.
young? That's interesting.
We'll see. We'll see. Well, while the midterms are obviously front and center, as we've been talking about, Democrats should be thinking long and hard about who they will put up against the president come 2020. Now, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker is getting some attention. CNN reports, quote, it's his travel outside the Acela corridor, coupled with a series of legislative rollouts in the Senate, that is drawing the most attention from Democratic insiders and political observers who view his frenetic 2018 midterm schedule and policy moves as a wink and nod entry into the party's shadowed 2020 presidential primary. And Booker himself tells CNN, quote, I'm not going to play coy. I'm sure after the midterm elections, I'll give it a look. But to me, my momentum, my energy, my focus is 2018 and making sure I get reelected in 2020. So, Melissa, there are a lot of names on the Democratic side, everyone from Joe Biden to Elizabeth Warren and sort of everything in between. Cory Booker is pretty well respected and has tried to walk the line between moderate and left wing. What do you make of him?
Well, from people that have worked directly with him have told me that he's lazy about preparing for, I know. I mean, they've worked with him and said he doesn't prepare when they go out to speak with people, that he doesn't like to put in the hard work. He doesn't like to put in the extra days. I mean, maybe that changes when he's looking for a higher office. I do think that he's somebody who it seems like could cross a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
I think that it really has become a cult of personality type thing where people have to fall in love with the person, and it matters less really what they stand for necessarily. You start to believe in what they stand for. Look at Bernie Sanders. I mean, I think Bernie Sanders still has so much pull. I think Elizabeth Warren.
And that's why
Exactly.
look
at Donald Trump.
Exactly.
That was why. And
Exactly.
both of those
Cult of
are
personality.
both of those are excellent examples of why it's not just generational.
No.
Right? It's about message. It's about the messenger. It's about the energy. The energy of that messenger being able to say, I believe in this, and I'm going to believe in this until I can't talk anymore. And that's what you have with both of those people you just mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's right.
I stood next to Bernie Sanders on the convention floor as they were bringing Hillary Clinton across that stage, and he looked like the straight line emoji. He was keeping it all in, but he was definitely not smiling.
So, Kristen, as a group, oh, sorry, Harris.
I was just going to quickly say, just in terms of where we are with the electorate, it matters as well. Because you're putting up candidates that actually have to get people to do something that they don't normally do, and that's vote.
Yeah.
We don't have a high percentage of voting in this country.
That is true. That is absolutely true. I was going to ask you, as a conservative, who are Republicans most scared to face?
I think Joe Biden.
Yeah.
But after some of the defeats we saw last week of more moderate people who can reach out to working class voters, and laziness played a part in that, to your point, that Joe Biden's path is getting more and more narrow. And you have guys like Cory Booker, who, if you watch those Senate confirmation hearings, put himself front and center as the #1 inquisitor of people who have Christian beliefs and ideas. How well does that play in the national level? And you contrast that to his ardent defense of Islamic refugees coming over to the United States, his attack on Christian bakers who live here, and you say, all right, this plays all right in the Northeast.
Something about religion?
I think that he's an anti-Christian person who's called out people's beliefs, and also he may be
That's a
lazy.
strong accusation to make.
Oh, it's absolutely true.
You agree?
Yeah, I agree with him. I agree. During Secretary Pompeo's confirmation hearing, he went after him and his Christian beliefs. He has regularly gone after Christians in this country for openly practicing their faith. So that is a national issue. And when it comes to Cory Booker actually making substantive arguments, he's always part of the resistance in the sense of saying this is ridiculous, this policy is absurd, Trump is being out of control. But I rarely hear a lot of substance when it comes to plans that he has and policies. And he's actually pretty green when it comes to being in the Senate. But my big question is whether he's going to tell tales of his good friend T-Bone on the presidential campaign trail, as he did when he ran for Senate.
Well,
his fake friend T-Bone.
My prediction is he's not going to be the nominee. So I'm going on record as a Democrat for saying that right now.
I think you're right.
While we continue watching this, there are growing concerns about Chinese spying on the campuses of American colleges and universities, how big the threat is, and what action should be taken to protect sensitive technology. And on our country's birthday, in between hot dogs and ice cream, it's time to reflect just what makes the USA so great, in addition to the ice cream, of course.
Aww.
Love ice cream.
Taking China to task for our trade imbalance with that country, and he's already announced tariffs, and now concerns are also growing about some other Chinese organizations. Members of Congress are urging Education Secretary Betsy DeVos to investigate possible attempts to steal technology and research from American universities. 26 lawmakers sent her a letter about one group's ties to dozens of universities. They write, quote, "We believe these partnerships may pose a significant threat to national security, and this threat demands your attention and oversight." Congress is also looking into attempts by China and other countries to steal federally funded research on campuses. At a hearing in February, Republican Senator Marco Rubio asked FBI Director Christopher Wray about the threat from China. Watch his response.
The use of non-traditional collectors, especially in the academic setting, whether it's professors, scientists, students, we see in almost every field office that the FBI has around the country. It's not just in major cities, it's in small ones as well. It's across basically every discipline. And I think the level of naivete on the part of the academic sector about this creates its own issues.
So, Chris, I was at a Senate Judiciary Committee subcommittee hearing a couple weeks ago on this very issue, and they were looking into the visa program that's being abused in terms of getting Chinese students to these universities. They're getting master's degrees, PhDs, and they have direct access, legitimate access as students to some of the most important research we have in this country when it comes to technology and other economic industries.
China's got one of the biggest spying rings of any other country in American borders. The biggest are actually, surprisingly, some of our allies. But China has got spies all throughout New York, all throughout Washington, all throughout the universities. And unlike a lot of people who want to do business with them, they're not they're a mercantilist country. They're one that looks at economics as warfare, education as warfare, China 2020 to China 2050. And they approach these as China wins, you lose. And that's the government backs their companies. And there's two. There's ZTE, which the Senate has been awakened to. It says, hold on, we're not going to let President Trump use this as a negotiation tool because they've shown that they're a bad company. And then Huawei, which has got a lot of its entanglement in the universities, that, well, not nearly as quite a smoking gun as ZTE. All of our intelligence services say, yeah, I wouldn't use their technology in my phones.
Well, if you think about motivating that younger generation, what motivates them most is games. They love to play. And so if you make something the end game in all of this, they're tremendously difficult to beat. So if you're going to let them in the campus atmosphere where they have all this access, academia is going to have to look at this as kind of a game, right? And put in stops and put in things to block so that they can make this into also a teaching moment for our kids as well. Because, you know, the best thing is to face the enemy, if you will, right? So they get to game that out. They get to play that out.
Melissa, the thing that makes the American economy the greatest in the world is the innovation. And China has a hard time because they're just copying everything. However, this is right up your alley when it comes to companies in China stealing American property and then not having a reciprocal relationship when it comes to us selling our product in China.
It's really true. And, you know, I've seen some of the same things that you have seen on campuses where you have students and professors, even visiting professors coming in from China and other countries, where you would have students and professors working together with companies in order to innovate and create new technology. And the idea that you have someone nefarious in there who's there to steal and is there as a plant, it's really up to our national security apparatus to vet those people, because I don't think universities are necessarily equipped to do that, and that's not their job.
Marie, real quickly, last
one. No, ZTE is a huge problem. Chris is right, and Marco Rubio has been really focused on this, and he's at odds with President Trump. It will be interesting to see how that plays out.
All right, we will see. Parents take note. A recent study finds parents who spend a lot of time on their phones or other digital devices during family time could have a lasting impact on their children's behavior. Whether being tethered to technology is changing family dynamics, probably. We'll debate.
devices a lot during family time may be having a negative impact in the way their kids behave. The study published in the Journal of Pediatric Research finds that parents who use their smartphones to escape the stress of dealing with a child could actually have a lasting impact on their children's behavior, leading to more hyperactivity and whining. Some of those findings conclude that parents have fewer conversations with their kids, give less emotional support to their kids, and give less positive feedback to their kids. This leads to kids having tantrums, sulking, and acting out over time. Yet another thing, Harris, to feel very guilty about.
Yeah,
we don't phones too much.
We don't do devices during the week unless it's for a school assignment. So it doesn't happen at meals because they're not out. And on the weekends, they only get an hour a day, and they choose not to do it at the table. And so we also honor that on the opposite side.
I was going to say,
parents.
this is about the parents.
Yeah,
it's
but
not
I mean,
about the kids.
you have to walk it out. So we set those rules, and then we set the same rules for ourselves. I will quote my father, the colonel, who used to say that you are going to give away all of your power if you lose the ability to make eye contact with people. So I don't allow my children to do it, and I don't want to do it either. And when I have something with conviction to say, I look at you in the eye, which means I have to put this down, and y'all know how I like it.
The challenge, I would say, Katie, is that so you sit there as a parent and you're trying to be present, and we all have, something going on elsewhere that needs our attention.
Especially with work, right?
Yeah, and you feel like, or if you're a stay-at-home mom, I mean, there's always something that needs to be done. Or the child, did you get this for my trip? Did you order it yet? So you're trying to be efficient and use your phone in a way that allows you to spend more time with your kids. But at the same time, when you're using it when you're with them, they don't love it. I mean, what do you imagine?
I don't have children, but I do have a fur child, a 3-year-old English Labrador. And I can tell you when I am on the phone or if I'm texting, he barks at me because I'm ignoring him. And he'll go get his toys and he'll come in and growl. And then he'll leave that one and he'll go and get another one. And it's like he wants me to pay attention to him. So I'm sure this study is accurate.
Example.
I don't have real human children, but I do have a dog who gets very upset when I ignore him on my phone.
I just get up and go to the ladies' room, or I get up and go in a different room.
Kids get enough positive enforcement as it is in America, I think. Maybe they could use a little bit more negative enforcement, like, hey, come on, kid, get outside. I'm not raising you like veal. But this is obvious that parents teach their children manners. When I meet adults who eat with their mouth open or eat with their hands or gross in public or on their cell phone, I think, where the heck was your mom and dad or whoever was raising you trying to bring down some manners on you? Cell phone's the same.
Yeah, you're going to be a great father. We're glad you're getting married soon.
And people now have like a basket that you have in the in your living room or something where when you're eating dinner, everyone puts their phone in the basket and it goes in the basket, and after dinner you can pick it back up. I actually think that cell phones are very unhealthy, and I'm trying to do less online.
You don't even have a Twitter account.
I'm not on Twitter. It is the healthiest thing I've ever done.
Twitter's a mean place.
Twitter is a very mean place. But I also think it's good to be more present. That's a good goal for all of us this summer. Get outside, do things. It's beautiful, and put down your phones.
How are we going to Instagram if we don't have our phone?
But keep watching
then you have
Fox.
to Instagram
the beautiful outdoors. How are we going to do that if we don't have our camera?
That's a good point.
And how will we see the love in each other's eyes if we're not making eye contact?
I don't know. I think like everything else, it has to do with setting boundaries and parents behaving by those boundaries as well. I'm somebody who has my phone with me a lot, but we put it to the side. You have a specific time you're using it, and then you put it to the side. I mean, we have rules in our house that you can't, the kids are not allowed to take their phones my kids don't have phones. They're not allowed to take technology or iPads or things
that's interesting.
out of the living room.
So your children are about the same age as mine, and they don't have phones. Ours are not turned on unless you're near Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So they can't, they can only text and all of that. But that's interesting. So they don't even have the devices yet.
They don't have the devices, but that's only, I can only resist that for so long. I know it becomes something where if they're going to be out and you want them to be able to talk to you and that sort of thing and know what they're doing. Well, our camps are technology free as well, so they're not allowed to take those. But they do have iPads, and they use them in the living room, and I strip them away as a punishment, and I reward them with time when they're good. So
I think you and I are the only ones on the couch right now with children, so we'll just be a couple of mamas.
The pros over there.
All right, you guys. 4th of July. Let's get everybody's take on the biggest reason they think America is great. Go to Twitter, go to Facebook, look for Outnumbered FNC real quick. Want to go around the couch, Melissa?
Yeah, the passing of the great Charles Krauthammer caused me to go back and look at a lot of the different things that he had said that were really meaningful, and there were just so many in there. And one was that we are the only country that was founded on an idea, as opposed to because of geography or because of race or because of, religion necessarily, or that, it was founded on the idea of liberty and freedom. And that's really something to remember on this 4th of July, to be grateful for. That means the freedom for me to do what I like, and for me to tolerate you doing what you like. You do you, I'll do me.
Yeah.
As long as you're not hurting someone else, this is what our country's about.
Yeah.
Katie?
I think it's hard to choose just one thing. I love this country. I'm in New York City today. A couple weeks ago, I was in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, the diversity just of geology and the types of people in this country is absolutely amazing. I defer to the West Coast as my favorite, but the East Coast has so much to offer too, and the people you meet along the way. I don't think you can choose just one. There's a special thing about being in America, and it's even more special, and I am so grateful that I was born in this country as an American, and I love that there are also people who want to come here and give up everything to become part of this amazing place.
Yeah.
Marie?
Look, our politics has been really nasty lately, but politics at its best in this country is about debating and what we all want to be and how we all want to be Americans together. And at its best, it helps people's lives. And so I'm grateful that left, right, center, we all get to debate it together.
Yep. Chris?
I would quote another great American thinker, Zach Brown, and say, I know I like my chicken fried and a cold beer on a Friday night. And also, of course, the people who are not here celebrating with us on July 4th because they are out in foreign countries.
That's right.
us.
Yes.
Yep. To the veterans and those still serving today, we salute you with a civilian salute. Thank you. You brought us this day about independence.
Yes, you did.
We're very grateful. Happy 4th of July. Look at the